And just remember, guys, that everybody told you that Canadian banks were safe because everybody was telling you 3 years ago that Canadian real estate was safe. Do you remember that? And those same people who told you that it was safe are telling you the banks are safe. So do they really have their eye on the ball? They're lying to you. The Canadian real estate market isn't declining. It's outright crashing. And we're going to get into how this is true by just looking straight at the data and seeing the unbelievable losses that are going on in this housing market as it implodes. So this came from Economic Woes on X, and it just shows the insane declines over the past 3 years. And these are nominal prices, guys. Just remember that. So if you look at the GTA, down 18.6%. If you go and look at some of these here, like King is down 55.43%. And just remember, that does not account for all the decline in purchasing power, all that inflation over the past 3 years, which was a huge amount. Even if you look at the cumulative inflation by the CPI standards, you're still at 27%, which is absolutely crazy. So it just goes to show these declines are absolutely massive. You're talking about a 50% drop in 3 years in purchasing power if you bought a house. And the housing market is just getting worse and worse and worse. Red Pill Rick put this on X. Reminder, there is another 500,000 or so mortgages to be renewed into higher rates this year. And then basically put this chart, which shows the monumental amount of mortgages that are going to be renewing this year. And you have to think, is this why we are seeing such a rise in inventory? Because people are finally getting the memo that the interest rates aren't going down to the floor. And if they are going down to the floor, it's because there's a financial crisis, in which case the unemployment rate will be shooting ever so higher at the same time. And the unemployment rate, as we know, guys, is just going up and up and up, and it's just going to continue that way. Why should we think otherwise? So these massive declines here, as Economic Woes shows, is absolutely a real estate crash and a bloodbath that is going on. So let's get into some of these losses here. And you know, it's not just you're talking about $1 million homes. You're talking about homes that are $7 million. They're nearly in double figures. So this home sold for $8.35 million in 2023, and it just sold, power of sale, $7 million. So yet another power of sale or foreclosure, whatever you want to call it. It's called power of sale in Ontario, but it's basically a foreclosure, somebody losing their home, is absolutely crazy. These just continue to happen. There's just so many, and they're happening everywhere. It's not just in Ontario. So rental wrecked in Ottawa. Landlords are getting absolutely destroyed as the housing market plummets. This multi-rental unit was bought in 2022 for a staggering $1.7 million. The lender just took it away and sold it with the tenants for $1.3 million, a staggering $400,000 loss. So that's over a 23% loss there. So these losses, they're not small. They're absolutely massive when you really think about what's happening. And here as well, you've basically got the massive losses that are piling up as well. So Ontario real estate is on the express train down. It doesn't matter if you're in Toronto, Ottawa, Cambridge, or Niagara, Ontario real estate is going down, and it's going down fast. And if you look at this listing here, so it was sold for $2.4 million. Looks like a great house in Ottawa, and it just sold for $2 million. So over a 20% loss there. And if you look at this one in Cambridge, I mean, I cannot believe that this house still sold for $740,000. It's just like a little starter home, essentially, for a family, and $740,000, but a $310,000 loss. So a huge loss there. Absolutely seeing these massive losses, over 20%, over 30%. And then Shazzy also put this on X. You've got to follow him. Hi, if I want to buy a second residential property, how much down payment should I be looking at the bare minimum? Or are there options where I can take a HELOC from my first home, which was bought a year ago, So basically, how does it work? Would like to get some details. And think about this. You know, they just bought a home and they're now looking to buy a second home. I mean, do they not even realize in most places the market is declining, how the market is turned? I mean, if this person does what they're saying here, then they're going to be bankrupt by next year, given the trends. And it just goes to show how clueless these people are who enter the real estate market and are continuing to enter because it was propped up by investors. And we're going to get onto an article from RBC about that, which you will really be interested in. So stay tuned for that. So first, I want to show you this. Toronto real estate prices fall below 1 million, sales at 90s crash levels. And obviously we covered that this is worse than the 90s crash, cumulative national house price decline from peak. And this one is worse than the 1989 crash that happened here. It's worse than 2008. It's worse than 2017. And I warned people, I warned and warned and warned, as many people know, from 2021 when this thing was going up and it seemed unstoppable to most people. I was out there warning people on this channel about what was to come.
And it became a mania, essentially. That's what a mania is. It's where all fundamentals go out the window, all logic goes out the window. And that's what we essentially saw. And now we're seeing that bleed into 2022, but that's not going to last long, and you're going to see the complete opposite of what we saw in 2021, which is an outright depression. And the thing is, we're already in that type of environment, if you really think about it, because inflation is running so high right now that people's wages are so negative that they will literally be bankrupt within 2 or 3 years if inflation continues at the pace it's going at.
People didn't realize why Canada avoided it in 2008. 2017 was just the brief decline before the mania, and it's just absolutely crazy. So basically, you've seen Toronto home prices now that are under $1 million, and this is something that people would have never thought was going to happen. So it fell to 985,000 here, down 4.5% over the same period last year. So again, you've just got to add in inflation to that, and not CPI inflation, real decline in purchasing power. And you know just how bad it's getting for these people who put their money, and a lot of money as well, extremely leveraged in most cases, into real estate. They are being obliterated, and the industry doesn't want to tell you this. The industry doesn't want you to know. And you have to realize that over the past 3 years, there has been a huge increase in the amount of the industry representatives that now are on YouTube, even with really popular channels. And you have to realize that those people have a bias, and they can't even see that they have a bias. They still might think that they're impartial. And don't get me wrong, some of them put out really good content. Some of them I'm going to try and get onto my channel as well. But it doesn't mean that they don't have that massive bias that you've got to be aware of. And most people just simply don't know that because they're not critical thinkers like we are on this channel. So home sales crash to 1997 lows as more sellers appear. So it's absolutely crazy when you think about how low this is, and it's just continuing lower. I mean, this is something that has just been trending down and down and down since we saw that peak. And remember, guys, the peak happened off 25-50 basis points worth of interest rate hikes from the lows. Think about where interest rates were back then after those couple of hikes compared to where they are right now. And again, the narrative back then was, oh, it's the interest rates, it's the interest rates. And then it turned into, oh, it's the tariffs, it's Donald Trump, it's the Ukraine war. It's anything but human psychology. It's anything but the cycle of a bubble. But it's always those things, as we know on this channel. That's why you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work this sort of stuff out, and how a schmuck like me was even able to tell this thing was folding before it happened, that this thing was about to implode. It's not because I'm smart, it's just because you really have to look and analyze what's going on and compare it to cycles in the past. So driving the price declines was the collapse of sales. Annual growth was down 23.3%, with just 5,600 homes sales recorded in April. It was the weakest buying demand since 2020, which was during the Loch Ness period, when buyers faced physical barriers to purchasing homes. Yeah, do people remember that? I mean, do people remember that every single province in Canada had a passport, and how Canada was the proving ground of the dystopian future that will likely become evident over the next decade? And people just think, oh, that's all in the past. I've forgot about that now. It's all about tariffs. It's all about Donald Trump. He's the idiot. Everything is just wrong because Donald Trump. It's not wrong because the government, and the government I just voted in again, is so stupid. But yeah, it just goes to show. And it even says here, you know, one has to go all the way back to 1997, the depths of the last major real estate bubble collapse, to get data that is this bad. So that is really showing you just how bad the data is. And another thing I want to show you is that it even says about in that article that RBC came out back in 2022 and they said that nearly $1 in $7 in residential mortgage debt at RBC is investor debt. They were saying how many investors there were in the housing market, and this is right at the peak. So you've only got to think about that risk there, because during the financial crisis in 2008, guys, it didn't take default rates getting to 30% in order to have problems. It took default rates getting to 5%, getting to 10% for banks to start to run into problems. And especially when you consider, compared to the American banks even, how leveraged these Canadian banks are. We've been into it many, many times. We'll have many more videos about it as well. And it just goes to show what a disaster and potential crisis could arrive on the horizon. And just remember, guys, that everybody told you that Canadian banks were safe, because everybody was telling you 3 years ago that Canadian real estate was safe. Do you remember that? And those same people who told you that it was safe are telling you the banks are safe. So do they really have their eye on the ball? Do they really have a clue what's going on? Do you think they look into the bank's balance sheets like I do? No, they don't have a clue. Those are the people that still think the Bank of Canada controls everything, when actually they control very little, and they just act like the facade to basically portray to people that, hey, everything is great, we're in control here, so everything is fine. Not the market is in control, and the market, if the market gets offside, then yeah, it can cause devastation, and that's what people don't want to know, because that's too much fear of the unknown. So it's 13% of the bank's portfolio, and I think that is an extreme risk that you've got to be thinking about going into a real estate collapse. I'm not telling you to go eject all your money out the bank, but I'm just saying, you know, RBC doesn't even have the biggest share of mortgages. That's actually CIBC, and they've got just really leverage ratios. You only have to look at their balance sheet. So it just goes to show what's happening is not good, and it's not going to lead to a good place, in my opinion. So anyway, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd highly recommend that you check out that video there. Please do. And if you're looking for a VPN and also want to support the channel, there is a link in the description below to ExpressVPN. That's the VPN that I use and I'm using right now. And I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.